Psychopaths are supposed to be cool, calculated killers, but Kohberger's phone records reveal a bumbling, blubbering, nervous wreck scrambling to cover his tracks.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. And my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. Welcome to True Crime Rocket Science from Claremont, which is a few kilometers outside Cape Town in South Africa. It's been a beautiful day here. Hope it's very good weather where you guys are. So in terms of this latest article on Kohberger from Fox News, this is a quote from the article. I think the vehicle was a huge stress point for him because he had registered it to park there. So it wasn't only the fact that Kohberger's vehicle tied him, but even the fact that he'd registered his vehicle with the university authorities, and so that was also going to link him. And that's according to Jared Barnhart, who along with his wife Heather works at the digital forensics firm Celebrite. Now a lot of us have heard that term before, and Celebrite are often responsible for deciphering, unpacking, analyzing the phone data. And so the phone data review as it relates to Kohberger is also quite interesting. So according to Barnhart, Kohberger had a PDF download of a list of Hyundai Elantras for the university, and you can see this long list of cars. And so the Hyundai Elantra was still on his mind in the hours before his arrest. That's according to the Barnharts. Now, he makes a really good point. He says, if you weren't the bad guy, if Kohberger was innocent, you wouldn't really care about the Elantra. It would be, wow, quite a coincidence. But at the time that he was actually scrambling, and he thought the police were on him, which of course they were. And this is dealing with the events of December 29th, 2022. So just that snippet from the phone data review, which is quite interesting. So we're going to be dealing with that in this analysis, but before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you find this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So as I said, we're looking at December 29th, 2022. At this point, Kohberger is in Pennsylvania with his parents, at his parents' house. The family are sort of gearing down for Christmas, and this is also the night of Kohberger's arrest at his parents' home. So according to the phone data review, Kohberger did the following during the late night hours of December 29th. This was just hours before his arrest. Kohberger searched for the phrases wiretap and psychopaths and paranoid. Now let me ask you, if you had to guess, would you say psychopaths tend to be more or less paranoid than the rest of us? Remember, they show less remorse than most of us for the feelings of others, but does that mean they are less paranoid about themselves, about what they have done? Well, it turns out they are a lot more paranoid when it comes to themselves. Now, if Kohberger was flaking out, and I think it's clear that he was, if he Googled psychopaths and paranoid, he likely would have kidded himself. He would have likely seen, oh, they are a lot more paranoid than most of us, and perhaps he would have kidded himself that his paranoia was just that, psychopathic paranoia. Well, except it wasn't. I also think it's interesting that he thought of himself. If you think about these search terms, it tends to suggest that's how he thought of himself, that this is a self-identifying clue. So he thought of himself both as a psychopath and a paranoid person, which I think is accurate. I think he was a psychopath and he certainly had reason to be paranoid at that point. And it's also probably why he studied criminology, perhaps as an indirect way to figure himself out, and which he apparently failed at as well. Anyway, let's move on. So if we go back to the phone data review, Kohberger read an article about how the police were still searching for the suspect vehicle. Now, you may remember at the time the public were desperate, thirsty, hungry and thirsty for news. And it does make you wonder, is it in the best interest of the investigation to basically tell the public what is going on, because you're also informing the suspect, and that's exactly what happened here. So can you see how something that's in the interest of transparency may not be in the interest of the investigation legitimately? Then he also Kohberger visited the Moscow PD website and checked the latest press release on the case. So you might say anyone would have checked on this information if they read about it. But how many people would go to the Moscow PD website and try to get the actual original press release? And then he immediately looked up an auto detailing shop. And then this part is really interesting. Within 10 minutes of finding out about this news story, Kohberger was shopping online for another car. That part is huge. It's a very clear sign of guilty knowledge, wouldn't you say? I mean, when last did you look at a police report for a car that looked like yours and then follow that up by shopping for a new vehicle while you were being investigated for murder? Okay, well, literally the pressure of, oh, look, they're really talking about my car, caused within 15 minutes of behavior, him trying to clean it and get rid of it. That's another thing, is he was actually trying to clean the vehicle around about the time that he was arrested. And I think he even took panels out and things like that. So Jared Barnard told Fox Digital that's just not normal. And I think he would have testified at trial about this behavior, and how convincing do you think that would have been to the jury? Funnily enough, Chris Watts was searching for a new vehicle at the time of the Watts murders. I think an Audi at one point and maybe a Toyota at another point. Both Barry Morphy and Scott Peterson sold their wives' vehicles and bought new vehicles shortly after those respective murders. But then at around 1:30 a.m. on December 30th, police swarmed Kohberger's parents' house and arrested him. It does make one wonder, if the cops hadn't nabbed him on the 30th, when would he have sold his vehicle and bought another? It's just interesting to think about that. In any event, police found a K-bar sheet at the crime scene, you guys know that, and Kohberger's DNA was on it, which led them to his parents' house in the Poconos with help from the FBI and state-of-the-art techniques called investigative genetic genealogy. But detectives have maintained that even if they didn't have the sheath, they would have found Kohberger by hunting down leads connected to the suspect vehicle, which appeared on surveillance cameras coming and going from the crime scene. Several surveillance cameras, quite a few. I think an oversight Kohberger made was not checking the CCTV camera at the neighboring home, but it seemed to be that camera was almost disguised as part of the light, if you look carefully. So do you see, not every case has to be a DNA case, and in this one, DNA helped reinforce the case against Kohberger, but it was by no means the only way to successfully prosecute him. But by the way, do you agree with that, or do you feel differently? In the next analysis on this channel, we'll continue reviewing the audio of Amanda Knox's very first interaction with her mother in jail. This was just days after the murder in early November. You guys watching that documentary that's just been released on Amanda Knox, released on Hulu. It's just come out. I also want to deal with a few further developments in the Watts case, including a fascinating area, which is how do Americans think about infidelity, and that is perhaps at odds with other folks in other countries. Then you may have heard one member of the Sullivan siblings family didn't pass the polygraph. Anyone know who that is? Well, let me know if you'd like me to deal with that in the comments. Finally, there's also an astonishing development in the Watts phone data review, Chris Watts case, that actually referenced this channel, and we'll be dealing with that in about 3 days' time. Anyway, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.